Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I hope you brought your walking shoes. I want to take you to a place that's kind of special to me. Walk a mile to a magic place down the river road. We're 10 years old, feels like yesterday. Cross the creek till you find a place down a path lined with chicory and Queen Anne's lace, where you can disappear without a trace until it's time to go down the river road. It's a wonderland of innocence, all my own. But the girl next door used to go with me there sometimes. And there was music everywhere underneath the sky, cricket song and the droning of the dragonflies, as we tasted young love while the sun was high and our hearts were free down the river road. Everything changes, innocence gets lost. Still you long for a place lost in time, lost in time. Well, we landed on the moon, and the river road became an interstate. I guess that's progress in the real world. But it's hard to hear the Orioles call over freeways and cell phones and shopping malls. There's a scent of a dream I can almost recall if I let my mind wander down the river road. Down the river road. Take a walk with me. Take a walk with me down the river road. Take a walk with me down the river road. Well, thank you. My name is Kyle Knapp. I feel very privileged to be here with you tonight and share some of my songs and stories from the journey. It's been a colorful and interesting journey. I was born 60 years ago in Michigan. And the story I heard was that After I was born and they brought in the birth certificate for my parents to sign, my mom suddenly said, "Oh my God, look at those initials." And my dad said, "Don't worry about it. Nobody will notice." And my civil rights activist parents gave me the initials KKK. And it's been downhill ever since then. And I grew up in small towns in Michigan and Illinois, and we moved to Vermont at the start of junior high and went to high school in New Hampshire and went to college for a year at the University of New Hampshire, long enough to figure out I didn't have a clue what to do with my life. So I dropped out and hitchhiked across the country, spent most of the summer and fall of 1975 on the road. Got a few stories from that to tell. And then a year later, I went back to the university, back to New Hampshire, Durham, New Hampshire, and thought I would drop in on some of my old friends and see if any of them were still there. And quite a few of them were, and quite a few of them had dropped out at the same time I did, but spontaneously showed up the same weekend for the same reason, just to see what was going on. And we had this totally spontaneous, unplanned reunion, hanging out with these people until the wee hours in the morning. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, somebody said, "Boy, it's getting pretty late. I think I'm going to go to bed." And somebody said, "Well, you know, the sun's going to come up pretty soon. Why don't we go down to the ocean and watch the sunrise?" So 25 of us crammed into a Volkswagen and drove down to the seashore. And it was too foggy. It didn't look like the sun was going to come up at all. So we drove up the coast of New Hampshire, up into Maine, and the sun didn't rise there either. But I don't know, it remains a powerful and positive memory to me. I've seen the sun rise a few times. I have it on good authority that it did actually rise that morning too, even though I didn't see it. But what was special about it was the people I was with, and it was just kind of a magical moment. And life throws you enough hard times and curveballs that you need to hold on to the good ones. And so I put that one into a song. The song is called Saturday Morning Sunrise. I've been down talking to the sea, cruising down the road on a Saturday morn, feeling like I'd just been born. And this is what he said to me: "Life has got so much in store for you, don't need to ask for nothing more." A seagull stopped by to say hello. The air is fresh with the smell of spring, and I ain't worried about anything. The only thing that matters is the going. But for right now I'll just sing my song, then I got to keep on moving on. Yeah, for right now I'll just sing my song, then I got to keep on moving on. Cross the bridge up into Maine, and the lazy world is waking while the clouds are slowly breaking. The sea don't care what's in a name, 'cause the more it's always changing, the more it all just stays the same. Yeah, the more it's always changing, the more it all just stays the same. Down here singing to the sea, and the smell of seaweed in the air, and the cold winds blowing through my hair. I love to live a life that's free. Don't worry about tomorrow. All I am is all I want to be. about tomorrow. All I am is all I wanna be. All I am is all I wanna be. All I am is all I wanna be. Thank you so much. Before I actually fulfilled my lifelong dream of becoming a world-famous rock star, I had quite a variety of employment alternatives along the way. Worked for a few years as a social worker, as an accountant, as a drugstore delivery driver. Sometimes I call myself a music producer. But for a while, one of the more interesting things I did was I worked on cars. I was an auto mechanic. I don't know that I was a particularly good one, but this is a story from that phase of my life. And was inspired by another mechanic that I met when I was working in that field. And this mechanic was remarkable, not by virtue necessarily of being such a great mechanic, but by virtue of gender. She was a woman. And even after all these years of advancements in gender equity, you don't see a whole lot of women who do that kind of work. And she took a lot of flack for it. There were a lot of people that just really thought a woman should not be a mechanic in 1977. And so I wrote this song to encourage her. I didn't change the names to protect anybody. Some details of the story are altered just to make it a little more fun, but more or less this is the true story of Jennifer Gray. I call this song Just One of the Boys. Working on a Dodge down at Ed's garage when in walked Jennifer Gray. She was a hard-headed, rugged-looking lady mechanic, and she had something to say. She said, I'm a qualified, certified A1 grease monkey looking for some work to do. And I hear that you're an equal opportunity employer. If I don't get a job, I'm gonna call my lawyer. Jennifer Gray, what in the world ever made you think that you could get equal pay? Well, the boss would rather see you staying home making babies and helping them pick up their toys. But you just keep on keeping on, mama, 'cause you're just one of the boys. Well, a woman ain't nothing but trouble in a place like this, said Mr. Ed. But by the time that Jennifer Gray got through with him, he wished that he was dead. She called him a redneck, chauvinistic so-and-so, and a few things I'd rather not repeat. She said, I can do just as good as you and maybe better. If you don't like it, write your congressman a letter. Jennifer Gray, I'll hold down the fort while you go to court and try to get equal pay. Well, don't you worry about it, you see, he just likes to make a lot of noise. You just keep on keeping on, mama, 'cause you're just one of the boys. Heard that Jennifer opened up a shop of her own and it's doing good. And when Mr. Ed heard about it, I saw him knock on wood. Her business started booming and I heard she paid a little more than I got there. So I said, sorry Ed, but I'm gonna work for her now. If you can't pray, well, I guess you better learn how. Jennifer Gray, just keep up your pace and stomp on the face whoever gets in your way. Gives you any trouble, just smile and look 'em right between the eyes. You just keep on keeping on, mama, 'cause you're just one of the guys. In 1977, 40 years ago, I married a Jewish girl from Boston and dragged her halfway across the country to live in Nebraska. Why she put up with that, I don't know, but we're still married 40 years later. And anybody who has been in a long-term relationship for a long time can tell you that it's not always perfection. It's not always as wonderful as you expect it to be when you start out. And life throws you some curves, and you have disappointments, and you go through this whole process again and again of figuring out where the boundaries are between who I am and who she is and who we are as a couple. And somehow, miraculously, we're still together. And I'm really happy about that. My young bride, who still looks exactly like she did 40 years ago, sitting right here in the front row. This song was born out of one of those difficult times, and it's called That Fire in Your Eyes. Can love remain when lovers change and outgrow the dreams that they once shared? It's living close to the edge, the unknown future to pledge, but baby, we're the ones who dare. Listen, Gail, your love is all I'll ever need. I live to see that fire in your eyes. So here we go, hurtling headlong into oblivion. Will you hold on to me? Can you be free when I belong to you and you belong to me, and we're promised for forever? I want you to grow and to be everything your dreams can foresee as we walk through life together. Listen, Gail, your love is all I'll ever need. I live to see that fire in your eyes. There's a light in you only I can see, hidden in your soul, it calls to me. I long to set it free. There's forbidden fruit in the garden, and one can't help but wonder, could I love somebody else as much? Though temptation threatens to pull us apart, you know there's a secret place in my heart that only you can touch. Listen, Gail, your love is all I'll ever need. I live to see that fire in your eyes. And don't you know when your body's touching mine, there's a passion holy and sublime. I won't compromise. Through the years, may the love we know keep burning strong. The promise in my heart and the fire in your eyes. Because it's true when your soul is touching mine, there's a passion holy and sublime that I won't compromise. I won't compromise. Thank you. We moved to Nebraska not too long after my parents moved here from New Hampshire. And after about 20 years, my mom and dad bought a farm out near Weeping Water, Nebraska. It was actually about halfway between Elmwood and Murdoch, Nebraska. If everybody, I'm sure, knows where those very famous places are. And they bought a farm to retire in, where they lived for the next 16 years or so, I think. And it was a time of, it seems life is defined sometimes by the changes that happen. And life, there's stuff that happens in between, but the things you remember is when everything gets stirred up and you have to figure out again who you are and where you fit in the universe. And our kids were growing up at that time, and we'd gotten very accustomed to having mom and dad close. If we needed a babysitter, we'd just drop the kids off at grandma's. And she never seemed to mind. And even many years after the kids had all grown up and moved out, she never really learned how to cook for two after cooking for 7. So there was always leftovers. We were pretty poor for a while in those days. And we needed dinner, we'd just drop in, and mom always had food for us. And then suddenly they moved 40 miles away, and everything changed. And I remember the first time I visited the farm. They had about 5 acres there, and they didn't actually farm it, but some of it was rented out to people who farmed it. But most of it was just kind of let to become wild, and except for my mom's garden, which also was pretty wild. And I wandered around the grounds just to get the lay of the land, and I just fell in love with the place. It wasn't the kind of a farm that you'd see on a postcard. It was very much Nebraska, and but it was home to them. And I had a sudden realization that for the first time in my life, Mom and Dad's home was not my home. And I wrote this song to, I say I wrote it to help the family through the transition. Mostly, the truth is, it just kind of came to me as I was wandering around the grounds, and I came back to the house and sang the part of it that I had already written to my mom and my sister, and they both cried, so I figured it must be a pretty good song. And what grew there was a lot of burdocks and thistles and vines and weeds and old tractor parts and stuff. It seemed like machinery would just come up out of the ground, old rusty stuff. And a whole lot of oak trees everywhere, a variety called bur oaks. There were so many bur oak trees there that my folks decided to name the place Bur Oak Acres, and that's the name of the song. Mom and Dad bought an old farm across from Grandpa's woods, and they called it Bur Oak Acres as they moved in for good. I suppose they could do better for what they could afford to give, but it kinda suits the way they like to live. shared coffee in the kitchen as the kids played in the barn, or scrambled on the tractor, or ran around the farm. To build a home or a memory takes love and sweat and tears. I can see another chapter started here. And they called it Burr Oak Acres, right across from Grandpa's woods. And I kinda wish I lived there, but I know I never could. I'd claim it for my own, but I'd probably be misunderstood. They called it Burr Oak Acres, right across from Grandpa's woods. I found an old broken windmill and climbed up to the top, and I looked out over bur oak trees and fields of growing crops. Suddenly I felt so small and all alone up there. Will I ever feel at home again anywhere? Oh, they called it Burr Oak Acres, right across from Grandpa's woods. And I kinda wish I lived there, but I know I never could. I'd claim it for my own, but I'd probably be misunderstood. They called it Burr Oak Acres, right across from Grandpa's woods. Ain't it funny how life passes? Doesn't care if you ask why. You can never really go home again, no matter how you try. You just pray the door stays open and Ma greets you with a smile. Coffee's brewing, come in and sit a while. And they call it Burr Oak Acres, right across from Grandpa's woods. A part of me will always live there, though I wonder how it could. I can visit here, but I won't stay any longer than I should. They called it Burr Oak Acres, right across from Grandpa's woods. So, I took a trip once, a tour that took me through Wisconsin and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and across part of Ontario into New England. And my son Daniel, who was probably about 9 years old at the time, and my two nephews, Dylan and Noah, came along for the trip. And we drove a beat-up old Jeep Grand Wagoneer. The Grand Wagoneer was the granddaddy of all modern SUVs. Big honking four-wheel drive vehicle that was kind of a gas guzzler, but I sure liked it. And I just bought this car with 120,000 miles already on it, so I knew it was broken in. Had it for 2 days and took it on a trip where I put another 4,500 miles on in a couple of weeks. And I was in the house doing some last-minute preparations, and I asked the boys to start loading the wagon up. And I came out a few minutes later to check on their progress, and they had the Wagoneer almost completely full of food. Well, when you're a boy and you're that age and you're going on a long trip, you don't know if there's food anywhere else in the world, so you need to bring it all along. And they knew it was important in our camping gear, because we were planning on camping some of the time. And all my musical equipment on the grass next to the car. Not enough room for it because of all the food they put in there. So, well, what do you call a wagon that's full of food? Anybody? A chuck wagon. So we named the car Chuck. Chuck was not like ordinary mortal vehicles. He was special. He had superpowers. He could fly. And we discovered this about halfway across Iowa when I realized I was going to be late for our next stop, our first stop, which was a gig in Wisconsin at a Christian music festival. And I didn't want to be late, and so I started thinking, how can we make up some time? Is there a shortcut somewhere that cuts off a quarter of the distance of Iowa? And I forget which one of us it was that had this epiphany, but it was kind of a revelation. Wouldn't it be great if Chuck could fly? And we thought, well, let's find out. Let's talk to the car and give it some encouragement. So we began speaking words of faith. Come on, Chuck. You can do it, Chuck. Up, Chuck. Up, Chuck. Well, you know, I was in the car with 3 boys about 8, 9, 10 years old. That was kind of fun. So we said that a few more times, and then 100 or so more times. And then by the time ordinary people would have gotten kind of sick of it, we did it a few more times. And then the most amazing thing happened. As the tires began to rise up off of the pavement, we broke into spontaneous verse of such beautiful eloquence that I will share with you now. We'll have a seat and I'll tell a tale of Chuck, the flying car. Perhaps you've seen his headlights as he's sailing through the stars. When his riders, girls and boys, is joined together, happy voices, you can hear them singing from afar. Oh, up, Chuck, let's go up, Chuck, into yonder wild and blue. Up, Chuck, let's go up, Chuck, into the clear sky, me and you. Up, Chuck, and when we're up, Chuck, oh, how fine it feels. Up, Chuck, let's go up, Chuck, our faithful friend on wheels. There now, aren't you glad you came out tonight? Well, I hate to tell you, but it goes downhill from here. Remember now as you set out to find your pot of gold. Wherever there's adventure, there's danger too, I'm told. There's good reason to be cautious. This kind of ride could make you nauseous when the wheels begin to leave the road. Oh, up, Chuck, let's go up, Chuck, into yonder wild and blue. Up, Chuck, let's go up, Chuck, into the clear sky, me and you. Up, Chuck, and when we're up, Chuck, oh, how fine it feels. Up, Chuck, let's go up, Chuck, our faithful friend on wheels. Up, Chuck, let's go up, Chuck, our faithful friend on wheels. Faithful friend on up, Chuck wheels. And we made it to our destination in time and sang Up, Chuck in front of 350 or so very confused-looking church people. I've been walking around on this planet for 60 years now, and you'd think by now I would have learned a thing or two. And I have. But the important things that I learn mostly seem to be things that I already knew when I was very young, but forgot along the way. Things like the value of friendship and how we're all connected to each other and to the universe. And instead of worrying about how we understand God and the mysteries of the universe, just being free to experience them. And live your life with a sense of wonder and curiosity. That came home to me a few years ago when I was on my way to the hospital to visit a friend of mine who had had a heart attack and was not expected to live. She was only 30 years old. And I'll give you some encouragement. The happy ending was that she did survive, and a few years later got a transplant and is doing well now. But that day we didn't know. And sometimes when you're faced with eternity, the unknown, fear, it seems that very ordinary, mundane things take on powerful meaning. And as I was driving to the hospital, I saw all these very ordinary things happening, and suddenly they seemed meaningful to me. It was November, and the first snowflake of the season, first one I saw anyway, as I stopped at a red light, fluttered out of the sky and landed on the pavement next to me and then disappeared. And things like that just seemed proof somehow to me that there is a bigger picture going on. There is, I'm connected to and a part of something I only barely comprehend, but is much bigger than what I understand. And by the time I got to the hospital, most of the song had been written. I finished the rest of it later. Her name was Sybil, and so I named the song for her. Sybil puts her boots on and crunches through October's cast-off clothing. The wind says autumn's over, but her heart still hears the spring. She walks out on a cold November morning as the snowflakes gently fall, kiss the frosty face of the dawn. But no one seems to notice another mystic moment come and gone. Days are growing longer now, and Sybil struggles to shake off winter's chill. Will her passion be awakened as April's ardent sky draws the dewy drapes of evening to make love to the trembling earth and kiss the blushing cheeks of twilight? Oh, but no one seems to notice eternal secrets whispered in the night. fragile fruits are waiting to be tasted, Sybil. So stay with me a while, and we'll savor summer's golden glory as all creation reaches to touch the tender tears on God's face. But does anybody notice the mystery unveiled in his embrace? All creation reaches to taste the tender tears on God's face. Oh, lift up your heart and wonder, mysteriously lost in his embrace. Thank you. I like to think of myself as educated, but I've never really, I don't have a real college degree. I have a 2-year degree in accounting and another one in computer programming and a certificate in auto mechanics, studied theology for a few years. So I have a very diverse base of education, but I never did go through and get my degree. The educated one in my family is my wife, Gail. And she has her degree in geography and works as a city planner. And it's very important. The city of Omaha would not function without her. But while she was getting her degree, I helped her sometimes with her homework and her papers, and she wrote a paper based on some reports that had been published about conditions in Eastern Europe after the Iron Curtain fell. And this song is maybe a little bit dated. I think things are not quite so dire in some of those places as they were then, but I was just horrified by some of the things I read. People who had suffered under the Nazis and then later under the oppression of the Soviet Union and then under Nicolae Ceausescu in particular in Romania. And my heart broke for the people of Romania. And I stayed up all night processing that feeling, and this song came out of that. Become of the laughter of the gypsies or the tillers of the soil and their simplicity? Did a faithless lover's promise leave your hope undone when a veil of iron blotted out the sun? I've seen a desecrated land where all that should be green is black, and the Danube is no longer blue, and your children choke in homage in the incense of the smokestacks to the gods of unrelenting rule. Romania, in a world that raped your daughters, crucified your land and sky, poisoned all the water, sold you into bondage, took away your will to live. our peaceful Western lives, disinclined to face the tears of our kindred in their woe. We ignore the voiceless victims of utopia gone awry. Is the friend worse than the foe? Romania, a world that killed your fathers, and crucified your land and sky, poisoned all the water, sold you into bondage, took away your will to live, came to find the grace to heal and to forgive. My heart is with you, but do you dare receive my love? After decades filled with promises and lies, with your wounded sons and daughters, is there enough left to rebuild? Did you survive the slaughter? While your struggle is on one, until you live in peace, I will plead your cause to heaven on my knees. Romania, thank you so much. You'd think if I wrote the song, I'd remember the lyrics. Well, I have to credit my wife for this song as well. One of her jobs, working for the city planning department, is to give names to new streets when new streets are built in the city. And don't go harassing her to name a street after your grandson or something like that. She can't really do that. There are rules to be followed. One of the options, though, is to name new streets after historical figures. And so she did some research when a new parkway was being planned, and she came across the name of a woman who lived here a long time ago. Her name was Rachel Snowden. And most people in Nebraska have never heard that name. And so we researched some of her history and found a fascinating story that I thought deserved to be told. In 1854, she and her husband Bill and their daughters took a ferry boat across the Missouri River from Canesville, Iowa, into what was then the Kansas-Nebraska territory. And when they got to the other side of the city, they had a charter from the government authorizing them to found a new city. And they founded Omaha. Stayed there for the rest of her life. And so I thought that story deserved to be told. I put it into this song. This is called Daughter of the Snow. Rachel Snowden staked their claim in Omaha, July of 1854. Rachel might have been the last white woman for 1,000 miles. Men would gather just to see her smile. Tell me, Rachel, why did you come here? What took you so far from your home? The first few lonely winters in this dusty frontier town would have brought an ordinary woman low, daughter of the snow. Cabin they called home became St. Nicholas Hotel. Sometimes she served 100 meals a day. You can hear her pots a-clanging to announce a noonday meal. One thing you never heard was her complaint. Rachel, what was it called to from the folks you loved to make this unforgiving place your home? Was fragile femininity a thing you left behind as you built a life where few would dare to go, daughter of the snow? 150 years gone by erodes a memory. A sprawling city barely knows your name. And the debt that's owed to you most likely will not be repaid. But then I reckon it was not for thanks you came. Not for thanks you came. Finally had his way in 1899. Rachel's bones are resting up on Prospect Hill, but her spirit is still with us, living in the legacy of a proud heart the prairie could not kill. Rachel Snowden, why did you come here to make this cold Nebraska sod your home? You can plead your case to history, but it's a fickle judge, I know. Is a graven marker all you'll have to show? If you could see your homestead now, 500,000 strong, I wonder, was it worth the price you paid? With your husband and your children, leaving everything you know to make this Nebraska land your own, daughter of the snow, daughter of the snow, daughter of the snow. Thank you so much. I think I have time for one more song. I do have some CDs available if anybody is interested, and I invite you to visit me online at kyleknapp.com, and you can sign up for my mailing list there and see my calendar where I'm my upcoming performances. Got the idea for this song once when I was driving across Nebraska. And if you drive west across Nebraska into Wyoming, there's a whole lot of wide open space there where you can go for miles without seeing anything man-made except the road you're driving on. And I can't help but wonder what it was like for people traveling in those areas a long time ago, before they had Flying J truck stops and wireless internet at the rest areas and running water and hospitals if you have an emergency, and all the things that we take for granted. And many of the pioneers who settled the Midwest couldn't even find proper materials to build their houses with. And so they would build houses of sod, cut blocks of earth out and stack them up like oversized bricks. I met a woman once who lived in a sod house for a while. She's gone now, but when she was a teenager, she lived for a while in a sod house in Iowa. And she said if you can get used to the snakes and the spiders, it's really kind of nice. It stays cool in the summer and warm in the winter. I don't know if I can get used to the spiders and the snakes, but as I thought about that, it reminded me of an ancient story that I think there are similar stories in a lot of spiritual traditions. The one that came to mind was the one where the maker of the universe knelt in the dirt and formed the first human out of dirt and breathed life into his nostrils. And it occurred to me that what God was doing in that story was building a sod house. And this is where he lives now. And so I'd like to leave you with this thought. The song is called House of Sod. Some see the Father's glory in the mountains and the deep. Crashing waters call his name. Silent stones his confidences keep. For some the mighty waves are where his hand is seen. But here on the great plains, the God of all creation speaks to me. Lord of the prairie, keeper of my soul, trusting to the simple heart, the mystery of old. You chose to make the dwelling place of God in this house of sod. Seldom do we see beyond this temporal facade, yet earth is crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. We witness and remove the sandals from my feet, as here on the great plains, the God of all creation speaks to me. Lord of the prairie, Lord of my heart, to be with me you left behind a palace in the stars, and chose to make the dwelling place of God in this house of sod. You chose to make the dwelling place of God in a house of sod.